Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Audra Williams, a writer and entrepreneur who also did some acting in her younger days. She co-starred with Raul Julia and Robert Joy in the very early VR drama Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, and appeared in an episode of the beloved TV series The Littlest Hobo, which is honestly all I wanted to talk about when we met. She's also just kickstarted Temperance Cocktails, a line of non-alcoholic drinks inspired by the tarot, with her partner, Haritha Nananaratna. Audra picked Born Yesterday, the 1950 screwball comedy that gave us Judy Holliday in her Oscar-winning turn as Billie Dawn, the unrefined fiancée of cheerfully corrupt junkyard tycoon Harry Brock. They've come to Washington to grease a few palms and buy a few senators, and Harry wants Billie to be a little more cosmopolitan. So he hires a journalist, Paul Verrill, to give Billie a few civics lessons that'll help her fit in better at cocktail parties, and things kind of snowball from there. It's your basic society farce, with director George Cukor making the most of the clear contrast between Broderick Crawford's crass swagger as Harry and William Holden's comic indignation as Paul. But it's all galvanized by Holliday's delightful performance, which gives us a sense of some of the energy she must have brought to the role when she did it on stage in Garson Cannon's play. But, contained, on a screen, forever. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Every time I watch it, I fall in love with it again, and at particular moments, oh my god, I'm so emotional. And also there's just so much to it. There's that she was in the play, and then she did Judy Holliday, who's her original last name, the Jewish name, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's Tuvim, I think, and it meant good days, and
Tuvim?
Maybe, yeah.
Tuvim. I mean, if it was Yiddish, it would be Tuvim.
Maybe.
Good days. My Hebrew is not good.
This also might be inaccurate, but that's what I read. And that's where they got Holliday from as her stage last name.
Oh, well. Huh. Tova. Tov is good.
Right, okay.
Shana Tova is the Happy New Year greeting.
Right.
So, Tovim maybe? Now
maybe,
I don't know. I'm just going to...
Well, that's for...
distract myself with linguistic horror.
But it's a pretty cute way to get a stage name. And so she was in the play version, and then they had her do a screen test for the film, but her screen test was intended to be what they were going to measure everybody else against, to find someone as good as her, but also not her. Because I guess she was too heavy. That was what I've read.
I always assumed it was about the communism thing, the House Un-American Activities. She was an advocate for, social justice. Really, I'm trying to think of exactly what the phrasing was, but at the time, she was lumped in.
Yeah.
And was and very famously Billie Dawned her way through the hearings. Right? And
So I wasn't sure what the chronology was. Was the play, then the hearings, and the movie? Is that the movie was 1950?
The movie was 1950, so it would have been around that time. The play was definitely before that.
Right.
But McCarthy and all of that was starting in earnest in 49 and 50.
Right.
And so she was already getting mixed up in there.
Right.
And I just assume that's why they imagined they could or should recast it, because who was in there? Lana Turner was considered. Rita Hayworth was going to do it. There was one other.
Mary Martin did a TV movie version.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't know if it exists anywhere to be seen, but I'm just so curious. It was only a few years later they did a TV version with Mary Martin.
Yeah, and it's just such an indelible performance that I can't understand why anyone would even consider recasting it.
Right.
She's just... I obviously didn't see it on stage, but if it is the same or similar, it's unrepeatable.
Yeah. And they actually, they did 6 live studio recordings of the movie, which is, I guess, super uncommon back then, because they wanted to, time the laughs. And I guess just to make sure it was kind of working, and maybe,
So played with an audience.
Yeah, they did, 6 as far as I read. And I don't know, it's interesting, because often, play, to movie translations are kind of, grim, I find, because it's just, the energy doesn't really translate. I remember watching A Long Day's Journey into Night and being like, this is an understatement. It's much longer than A Long Day's Journey. It's anyway, I was in a theater and I was like, oh my god, no, the mom came downstairs, there's more of this movie. So maybe they needed to try to figure out a way to get that energy, and just sort of play with the characters. So they did it for, and I guess it's very unheard of, but they did these 6 performances, and people were complaining that the laugh overrode the next line, and George Cukor was like, "Go see it again."
That was the solution.
Yeah,
I'm
go
not
see it
changing
again
my
then.
time.
I think it's like, yeah, that's solid advice. So when she was part of those hearings, like apparently like most of people's, like that process was very long for many people, but hers was just this 3 months because she was just like, what do I know about politics, you know? Which is so amazing to kind of like, to like leverage somebody's underestimating of you. I think it's like, I feel like that's like something I can relate to a lot, because I feel like I'm always like, what is that line between disarming and bimbo? Like, it's like, you know, and it, like, you go to, like, I had this meeting with the credit union to try to get, like, a loan a long time ago, and, like, the guy for sure was just like, oh, this is a, like, little lady with your with your, like, business idea or whatever, and then I just was like, I just name checked like Robert Stanfield. I was like, this is not the party Robert Stanfield. He was talking about like Stephen Harper, and he was just like, oh, like all of a sudden, like he just like, so if you can kind of like, yeah, that's like under promise, over deliver. It's a bit of that. So I think it's genius to be like, okay, you guys think I'm stupid, so I'm just gonna play up stupid, and I'm, gonna, you know, kind of sail through this. And there was a quote that she said to her husband, which was, Woody, maybe you're ashamed of me because I played Billie Dawn, but I'm not ashamed of myself because I didn't name names. And I think that this like, I don't know, just like that she had this like strong like moral like compass. Yeah. And she died when she was the age I am now.
Oh.
So yeah, she's 43 when she died. It was her second bout of breast cancer.
I know, yeah, that was when you it's just, it's still something I can't process. I've constantly confused her with someone else who died in a plane crash. And I don't know why. It's it's probably because I learned about both of them at the same time when I was younger, and it's forever mixed up.
You
and
like
so
conflate them forever.
But I'm like a goldfish, so every time I find out, oh, that's right, that's right, she died of breast cancer, which is, I suppose, worse than a plane crash. Cause
I think, and it was her second bout of it too. So.
Yeah, and she had a throat tumor at one point as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just.
It sounds like not a pleasant kind of way. So yeah, I'm not sure I don't know what year that was or how old she was in the movie. But I did read that they made her lose a lot of weight to be in the movie. Like,
well, she died in 1964.
Okay.
Was it, or 1965? And she was
really
43,
bad with numbers.
So she would have been in her late 20s, early 30s when she played. Well, the late 20s anyway when she played on stage.
Right. And there's that line where she's just like 30. You know, I'm 29. So maybe she was 29. Like, I don't know. She could have been around there. Yeah. Her son is a film editor. Paris is Burning. He was a film editor on Paris is Burning.
I didn't know that. Yeah. See, there's all this stuff that I'm just completely ignorant of.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Like, yeah, I don't know. What a legacy, I guess.
Yeah, and if there is the one performance that does define her, it's Billie Dawn.
Completely.
It's so... It's the kind of thing, just watching it again and realizing just how much energy she puts into every line, every scene, because she's doing that with her voice, obviously, but then there's her physical poise and the way she moves.
Yeah. And you can't take your eyes off of her, so you're always, like, so she has to do all those, like, she has to be reacting as much as, like... Oh, yeah. Yeah, like, she's never not the focus of attention, at least, you know, when I was, watching it, just, like, it's hard to take your eyes off of her, because, you know, like, her fiancé... is like pretty one note, like
Brett Crawford.
Like just like they don't like.
He has to be. Right?
Yeah,
he's a thug.
For sure.
He's an unreformed, unrefined. He's basically an ape.
Right.
He takes his shoes off and picks his feet and all that stuff. And he's low class. He's got her along. They've been engaged for 7 years. They've obviously been together longer.
Yeah.
And it's simple. Just comfort, right? He likes having her around, even though he doesn't actually like having her around. Right.
Yeah, and he says, why haven't you married her already? And he was like, well, because now if I do something for her, I'm a good guy. But if I was her husband, like, I just kind of have to. Which is
she'll
like,
just expect it.
Yeah, she'll expect it. So interesting. There is, like, in the beginning when he first meets, like, the reporter, there is this one where he's like, oh, like, I think I like junkyards because of, like, my first junkyard. Like, he has that sentimentality about his first junkyard. And so I'm like, oh, like maybe the first time I watched it, I was like, maybe this is going to be like a bit more nuanced. But then that's kind of like the end of it. You get that like little sense of him as a person, which I guess is just a setup for like, her like didn't give him back the the junkyards one at a time later. So you just get a sense that he's invested in one of them in particular. But that was kind of all the emotional range that he got to have. But maybe that's a fun part to play. But
I think on stage it's probably less of a demand, right? You don't need that much backstory for the antagonist.
Right.
But because it's a movie and because it's, it's close-ups and we're looking at Broderick Crawford and trying to understand who he is, and there really isn't anything there.
Right.
But we want there to be,
right,
just because that's the way the human brain works when you're watching a movie.
It's true. Yeah.
But you can also understand why they're not trying too hard, because she dominates the frame.
Yeah.
To the point where William Holden, who was not, a boring person,
right,
just sort of slides into the background and looks at her admirably.
Yeah, with the rest of us. Yeah. I wish that like her husband didn't hit her, like for a couple of reasons. Like one is just because it's hard to watch, and otherwise it's the very it's joyous movie, like there's a lot going on, but it's like, and I'm always just like, oh fuck, Ray's gonna hit her, and like every time I see it I'm like, oh. And also I think he's very lazy. Like I feel like this whole like culture of casual misogyny, like the only way that a person's bad is if they hit you. Like I think that like that really is, it's a very low bar, and I think it's like, when you hear people say like he doesn't hit you, like that's like the barometer of a bad husband. And I feel like it's already communicated he's a terrible husband, or fiance rather. Like he thinks she's stupid, like he only has her, like like he's using her to like launder money and like whatever. And so like I think we already think he's a bad guy, and then like I don't know, so then she stands up to him like really, and then he hits her. It's just like I always kind of want to like, I want a super cut of the movie where that doesn't happen.
It's really frank about it, right? I mean, it's a two-shot. It's the I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's the end of that long, great farce take where they're having a screaming argument that keeps pausing because someone comes into the room, and
she's looking things up in the dictionary, I think, or like, I
think they argue over definitions.
Yeah.
But then she tells him, she gives him her ultimatum that she's become a conscientious person, which is the thing that somehow never made it into Pygmalion, which is this is clearly riffing on, but the idea that not only do you educate someone, but you give them a moral compass. Mm-hmm. And while she probably understood right and wrong, she just has a more rarefied understanding of what her responsibilities are as a human being.
Yeah.
I thought about The Good Place a lot this time.
Oh, interesting.
Just trying to figure out if this is her
that's
test.
Good. Yeah.
If this is Billy's attempt to Eleanor Shellstrop herself forward.
Yeah, and she's like, you're basic. Only she calls him like an ignoramus or something, and like throws the dictionary at him to like look it up. But
she's
it's like
using better words, exactly.
Yeah, it's the same thing kind of. It's like
but when it does break, when he breaks, when Brock hits her, she says, no, don't, like this has happened 100 times before. And I think that's what's awful about it.
Yeah.
You experience, it's the one moment in this entire frothy comedy where just ugliness breaks through.
Yeah.
And I think it's the pivot where if anybody in the audience was sort of still on the side of, oh, they should stay together, that William Holden's just trying to break them up.
Yeah.
That's when that ends.
Yeah. And that's what I think is like, toxic about romantic comedies in general. It's just that like, these two people are on screen together, so we were rooting for them already, and now we need something really dramatic to kind of like, it's interesting because it's a low bar, like, to show someone is, maybe it's a high bar to show someone that's terrible, like that, oh, he hit you, that's a real like serious action, now we know you're a bad guy. But I was listening to Frank Birbiglia talk about Sleepwalk with Me, the movie of his whole situation with his sleepwalking, and test audiences they weren't feeling the relationship between him and the woman who was in 6 Feet Under, whose name I don't know.
Lauren Ambrose. Yes. And
then they added in the scene where when he picked her up from work, he brought her a sandwich. And everyone was like, oh. And it's just like, wow, like now this is a great relationship. Like one time he brought her a sandwich. And so like, it's just like this whole situation of what we live in. Anyway.
You just need the highlighter to show people that.
But it's just like, that's such like it's just like, really? Like that's how you show that this is like, it's just such a small amount of effort to be considered a good possible partner.
Sure, yeah.
And then to be a bad partner, you've got to like just really like, hit a person. And anywhere in between, like you're fine.
Yeah. But it is that other rule of romantic comedies too, that the two prettiest people are going to get together. And people don't seem to understand that that's not necessarily storytelling.
Right.
It's just, it's iconography, right? Like it's the signs on the road map, these two. Or the songs that you score things with when people show up. And Born Yesterday really doesn't have any of that stuff.
No.
It predates all of it.
Yeah, and I think it's, like, every time I watch it, I'm surprised. Because, like, that whole, like, these people are gonna fall in love. Like, it gets projected really early, but then it's like their second interaction or something, she's like, are you a talker, or do you want a little action? And so it's like, oh, like, she's just naming it, and it's just like such a different rhythm of that story usually. And so it's like, it's, to me, that's just like, it's so interesting, because it's like, yeah, they get there and then so then it's in the room already, versus this like, oh, what a surprise, we kissed at the end, and so I really love that about it too. And I think that more of that, just anytime you like play with a formula, but I guess like you're saying, it wasn't exactly like a formula yet, but
they're still sort of figuring it out.
Yeah.
I mean, The Awful Truth was what, 9 years before that? Or
Yeah.
It Happened One Night is 37, and you're 39, and you're dealing with all of these things that aren't tropes yet, but that obviously are striking a chord with audiences, and so you lean into them. And then you have Garson Kanin just going, what? I think I like it better when I do this.
Yeah.
And it does, I mean, it also hints that Billie is smarter than she looks.
100%.
And than she acts. She's clearly got emotional intelligence, like that's established early on.
Yeah.
And yeah, just putting it out there and offering that direction for the story is I suppose it was shocking at the time, right? And also just the mention of action has a connotation.
Right, that was like a line that I guess the censors were like pretty keen to get out, that I guess someone went to bat for and it stayed in.
Yeah.
But yeah, also like, it's like, it puts it in the room, it names it early, and then it's also like, she's the kind of initiator of it, versus the like, I'm just gonna kiss you or whatever. Like that whole like strong take charge kind of, which he's not, right? And there's a funny scene where like, he's not wearing glasses and she is. Like, I think that like, it's funny because it's like you're saying about him not being like he's kind of a, he just watches her, and it's almost like I was like, oh, it's that guy, like, like without his glasses, I was like, oh no, it's the main character that we've been watching this whole time, but I haven't really been paying much attention to.
I had a little window of time when I was confusing Crawford and the actor who plays his lawyer, because they're both just kind of boxy looking white guys.
Completely, yeah. So I think that's
Holden
a neat
has a
scene.
different build. So he stands out.
It's true, definitely, yeah. But yeah, it's just like, it's that like his moment of vanity maybe is like not having the glasses, and then her moment of like giving up her vanity of like wearing those glasses. Like, I think that's really interesting, and it's like, it's not super subtle, but they also don't like make a big thing of it either, which I feel like is like, I guess I don't know if people just felt like audiences were smarter then, or they're just doing a different thing, or maybe it's because it's based on a play. I don't super know, but I like the things that they are really obvious about, and then I like the things that are like a little more subtle.
Yeah. Well, and the signals they use to indicate sophistication are genuinely sophisticated.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to drop, like, I was trying to think of a modern analog, because it couldn't be books on law. We don't have those anymore.
Right.
There'd be TED Talks.
Yeah, oh true.
There'd be some awful shortcut.
Right.
And the whole point of this film is that she does the work.
Right.
She's not, again, thinking of The Good Place, like, they're not cheating.
No, it's a lot of work.
They're really reading these books. They're really sitting down with one another. And it's not joyful. Like, it is effort.
Yeah.
You get to watch someone better herself.
Right. It's not like a breezy montage of like they go to like walk through galleries and all of a sudden she's got glasses on at the end and she loves politics.
It's kind of wonderful though that she wakes up to her own complicity in this corruption.
Yeah.
As we get to see that discovery, it plays out in real time. It's not a revelation. It's a slow build. Yeah. So yeah, you just, again, a movie that takes its time, a comedy that takes its time. The other ones I would pull up, His Girl Friday, Philadelphia Story, they're all rat-a-tat. They're all really fast. Yeah. They're screwball, but they're at speed. Yeah. And Born Yesterday, maybe it is just because it was a stage play originally and they didn't want to veer too far from it. Right. But it just luxuriates in the conversations. Yeah. It lets things happen.
Or just like the time when nobody's talking and she's just like listening to the radio or whatever, that like kind of agonizing but like wonderful scene where she's just like, turning it on, and or where they're playing cards. Like there's like almost no talking for like 5 or 6, or I mean, you saw that one, but it's quite a while. Gin rummy or whatever they're playing. Yes, gin rummy. So yeah, so that's like the conversations are longer and more thoughtful, and then there's also these silences that I feel like if it was happening in a movie now, there'd be like it'd be like Children of Man. It'd be like there's a point to the silence, and but that's just like they don't have anything to talk about. Like they just is like how they interact is this like very like kind of mechanical like card game playing, and I think that's really like well communicated.
Yeah. So I didn't even ask you when we started, when did you first see it? What was your first experience of it?
I think it might have been in school. I went to O'Neill, which is a performing arts high school in Oshawa, and we had a teacher named Mr. Fairburn who showed us a lot of movies. And I think because he cared about them also is probably a good way to spend some time with some teenagers, just make them watch something. But I think he was really into like the Hays Code, and he wanted to like, talk to us about that. I think that's the first time I saw it. And then it's sort of like one of those movies that like I wanted to show to everybody that I love, you know what I mean? So I feel like much like I've watched the first like 4 seasons of like The West Wing with like the series of people, I feel like this is like, I don't know, it's not like a test, but it's just like, this is an important movie and I want to see how you feel about it. And so yeah, and my own like tiny like I did like TV and commercials and stuff as a kid, and so yeah, I don't know like how that like plays into my experience of like watching things, because I don't know any different. Like I grew up on this. My parents grew up in Toronto. Then my mom went to move to a farm because she watched too much Lost on the Prairie. Like, it's actually true. Like, she just like romanticized this farm life, and Ma and Pa Ingalls never fought or whatever. And her parents got divorced, so she's like moving to a farm. And then she was like living on a farm with a toddler and like a husband who was learning how to be a farmer. And I think it was actually like pretty isolating. But we didn't have a TV, and I just got read to all the time. And then I would like, they thought I could read because I would like recite the books back, but I had just memorized them. And then somebody was like, you should put on commercials. And so I think that they were a bit worried about sending me to school because I was an only child and I was quite shy. And then, so I did this like Margot Lane School of Television thing. And then I had like long red hair to like the back of my knees, and I could learn lines really quickly, which I feel like is the scope of my talents. Like, I remember like I did an episode of The Littlest Hobo, and, like they put like glycerin tears on me. Like, I had no ability to like, some kids, like I just like, you know, but that was not me. It was just, you know, I could learn lines quickly. And
but you got to meet Hobo. I really want to talk about that.
There were 7 dogs.
Right. Which ones did you get to play with?
It was such a gong show of a film shoot because someone hadn't filed paperwork properly, and so they were supposed to get Grizzly Adams bear, but like someone forgot to, I don't know, sign something. So that we got like what seemed to me, now looking back, as like AA.1bears.biz. Like, it was just like this bear that hadn't been used in a long time.
You had an off-brand movie
totally bear. Like super like, yeah, not Grizzly Adams level bear at all. Very D-list bear at best. And there was an alligator that like escaped during filming with like, because it came in and had like this plastic bag on its head and this chain around its neck, and I remember it just like whipping its head back and forth. And then the director, whose name was Alan Eastman, he had like kids call him Alien, which is pretty cute. He through the micro or whatever, the what's it called, megaphone, was like, just get all the kids back from the shore, we can't find the alligator. And that wasn't a union shoot, by the way.
I was about to ask.
Yeah, which is like also evidenced by the fact that I get like a $6 royalty check like 3 times a year. And I used to put them on my fridge because they were funny. And then like, I'm a freelancer, people like to pay me. I was just like, you know what, like I could use that like $100 at this point. And then I cashed them, but then they were all expired because you only have so long to cash a check. Yeah. A cautionary tale.
Yes, I still have the first check I ever got for professional writing.
Oh.
Yeah, $20, never cashed. I'm an idiot.
Oh. That's funny.
$20 in 1988 was actually $20.
Yeah,
it meant something.
People get paid that now for like writing SEO pieces. It's grim.
I know, it's incredibly depressing.
Yeah, it's bad. So yeah, so that shoot was like, and the director, like, again, like it's one of those things where like all these people seem like adults to me, and now like I'm like, oh God, you're so young. And so he was just like, kids and dogs, because there was the conceit of the episode was that children had been playing Dungeons and Dragons, but Dragon Slayer in the woods. And then vandals, which is the actual word in the movie, not like in like the 20s, but like in 1985 or whatever, had let all these reptile farm vandals, so that set them all free. So now there's an alligator, and there's a python, and there's a Komodo dragon, and then there's just a bear because it's the woods, and we get the baby bear because it's really cute, but then there's the mom bear. And I remember that the bear, like, they're like, climb a tree, and I'm like, well, I don't, like, I'm not that kid. So they had to like, if you look at it now, like I'm holding onto handles, like it was all padding, but they put peanut butter on the tree to get the bear to be like, I'm gonna eat you. But when they got Thor, the dog that barks the most, they don't even really look that similar. You see them all together to come like, and then, but I guess like it was actually like a situation, like they had to like really like, you know, someone had to step in and make sure that the bear didn't actually get the dog. Yeah, the bear was. I don't think that bear knew it was acting.
This sounds like a Milo and Otis situation where things are going to go terribly wrong, and we find out years later that they sent out 3 bears, one came back.
I know. It's kind of how I feel about like whenever I see Tom Waits in a movie, I'm just like, does he know he's in a movie right now? That's I think that bear. I'm like, I don't think this bear knows it's acting at all. Anyway, so yeah, I've never been somebody who watches something without having had the experience of like being on a set and things like that. So I don't know, like if that's part of like why I get so emotional about it, or just like, yeah, I just think that just like her finding her agency and just the way it's not like a Pygmalion thing. Like it's not like he doesn't tell her like what to think.
Yeah,
like,
he doesn't order her into loving him.
Yeah,
through his education, which is the
for
creepy
sure
undertone of that.
Of
film.
course, yeah, and it's and like you said, like it's like he's got like you find out early that he's got this like solid foundation of her own, like she has this ability for like analysis and and she has values and stuff, and she's kind of like dialed it down to kind of live this life, but it's still there, so it's not this kind of like wide-eyed like what do you mean like injustice. So and and she is somebody who like you get the sense is like she's experienced oppression, like so she I think that she kind of has that to like map onto like when she's like reading these books about politics and things like that. But
I mean, she's discovering empathy, she's discovering morality, she's discovering honor, I think, which isn't something that she's used that much before.
Yeah.
She talks about how she was in the chorus, but she had a couple of lines. She wasn't just a chorus girl, so she's always aspired to more, or always seen herself as more than.
Yeah.
But she's also, what's the best term? She's put herself on hold to figure this life out and then just sort of fallen into this relationship, which is comfortable and cared for and also clearly exploitative, but she didn't think about it. She like you're watching someone learn again to value herself, but also to think for the first time.
Right, and to like have like you can like have an impact on things and even like when she realizes like, oh, this is a cartel, like just seeing like just like I just think it's just masterful acting, like watching like all those like little I don't know, things fall into place on someone's face.
You're seeing levers click and gears grinding and it's all in her eyes and maybe in her jaw, but it's just this incredible.
I feel like the only other instance I can think about that is in The West Wing, when Toby goes looking for Josh and he finds him against the wall and he's been shot, and you just like 15 things happen on Richard Shipp's face. I'm just like, what? Like, and I've like rewound it and just like, that's like, he's like, oh, it's Josh. And then it's like, oh, he's been shot. And then it's like, oh, it looks bad. And like, he just like his face kind of, and he just like, you can see, like, I also like, it's interesting because you do find out later, spoiler alert for a very old show, that he actually was the one that didn't want the security line, or didn't want like the
metal detectors.
So he like all the tent, I guess, that they typically put over. Like he wanted the president to come in and out of the building.
Oh, right.
Without all that, and so he feels like he's responsible. And I think that like I do think that you can like I do think that's part of it. Like I do feel like if like when you watch that reaction again, there is a bit of like, I did this. This is me. Anyway. So yeah, not many people can pull off like watching somebody think.
I've never understood how people can do it, and how people can do it subtly, right? So you can tell and communicate to the actors or not the actors. You can communicate to the audience what you're feeling while still being almost physically inert.
Yeah.
Jessica Chastain can do it. And she's
I just rewatched Miss Sloane.
Yeah.
Oh, this movie was so good, and people didn't watch it.
Was that the one about? That was the one about gun control, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm constantly confusing it with that and Molly's Game.
Oh, I don't know.
They came out within a year of each other, and they're both Jessica Chastain movies.
Were they both filmed here? Okay. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it all bleeds together, but Miss Sloane is one of those little small performances where she has to display a huge conversion inside. Like she can't
and she knows more than the audience does, kind of until like the reveal at the end. Like you don't know she's playing this like 4D chess game, and she kind of it can't be like like if you rewatch like The Sixth Sense, like it still makes sense. Like if you rewatch the movie knowing that it's not just like that came out of nowhere. That's like, so you can kind of see on her face that like she's thinking on a lot of levels. I also used to be a sign language interpreter. That was like my first job. Yeah. So it's funny because I was I went to high school in Oshawa, and I was in performing arts high school, and I was like in dance, and I was in drama a little bit, mostly dance. And I was like, I'm going to do arts. But all my friends were like a couple of years older, and I could see that like everybody who went to university like came back to Oshawa. It was just like this conveyor, but like I went to York to take film, now I'm back in Oshawa. And obviously like I'm very in favor of studying. I don't think that it needs to be like a line to get a job, but I knew I wanted to get away, so I was just like, I remember like I was like, okay, people who go to college seem to not come back, so I got this college book, and I was like, oh my god, I'm not gonna, like, I'm plumbing, like this is terrible, because I took OAC credits, and my OAC credits were English Writer's Craft, English Literature, French, German, Drama, and History. These are not transferable skills largely.
I had a similar grade 13 career track.
Yeah.
I think media. I had media.
Yeah, and I feel like I ended up in a great place. And But I was like, oh, sign language interpreting, like, yeah, that's cool. And I had taken a couple sign language courses, and then this is like very tangential, but I was at Edgefest. This is sort of like this funny thing to change my whole life. I was at Edgefest and I found a backstage pass on the floor, on the ground, like at Ontario Place. And then I found Dan Turan, who I just thought was a nice man because he seemed like the only nice person, like Humble and Fred, lots of shouting, but he's this calm presence on Humble and Fred my dad would listen to in the morning. And I was like, how do I use a backstage pass? And I saw that on his face. He's like, okay, I'm just gonna just, like, he decided to not take it from me, and he was just like, walk that way and look like you know what you're doing, and just like, then he left. And so then I ducked backstage and I met Sarah Craig, who I was just like, worshipped her at the time, her music. I mean, she's still amazing. And she was saying that she was doing this Rogers Cable like interview, and and she gave me her backstage pass to pass through the fence so I could bring my other friend backstage. This is like people having solidarity with children or young people. Like that's a real thing for me. And so she was like, yeah, and I really want someone to like sign one of my songs. And I was like, I know sign language. And my friend looked at me like, you totally don't. And I was like, whatever. So like that was like I started taking sign language because I had told Sarah Craig I already knew sign language. So thank you, Dan Duran, for getting me backstage. So then I became a sign language interpreter because I'd taken these courses. And then I was working in Ontario, Toronto with deaf people, AIDS committee. My carers got elected. That all stopped. And so I moved to this town of 500 people in Nova Scotia and went all the way through high school with a deaf student as just his interpreter. Anyway, so I feel like I really watch faces because like something like 60% or 80% of like grammar like happens on faces, which is why sign language gloves are never going to be a thing. It just doesn't make any sense. No deaf people have ever been involved with someone's sign language glove ideas. Anyway, So I do think that like that's like I do like when I'm watching like a movie, like I feel like I'm like all those little micro expressions and like anyway. Yeah. It's not really related to the movie, but it's related to my watching of the movie.
But it is, sure, because it's process. I mean, it's your process. It's how you connect to it. But I was just thinking about the way that the film is shot kind of directs you. I mean, even more so than most. It doesn't. That's true. It does close-ups, but it also has that sort of static two-shot thing going on where you get to admire. I think the initial idea was, well, you can admire the finery, look at the clothes, look at the wardrobe,
like
the
18
drapes.
Costume changes or whatever.
But it also just naturally pulls your eye up to whoever's speaking. Mm-hmm. And Judy Holliday knows how to play to a camera.
Yeah, which is interesting because it was like a play for so long, but...
Yeah, I just keep trying to picture how that would play as a play.
Yeah.
Like how you would, like, does she modulate her shouting? Does she...
Right.
Because she's up at 11 a lot. She's a very loud presence in the film, intentionally. Mm-hmm. But does that mean you blow out your voice every night? Does that mean you... At what point? She did something like 1,600 performances of it?
Oh, that's unthinkable.
A lot. Yeah. And it's inconceivable to me that she could just keep doing that.
Yeah.
But maybe... And how do you get the facial stuff? How do you play reaction?
Right, because people are like...
When you're 7,500 feet away in a giant Broadway theater. That's probably too many feet. But a lot
of feet. A much further than to a screen too.
Yeah.
It, so,
and that's the essential difference, obviously, between film and a play, is that we can be directed, we can be forced to look at something, we don't have to try as hard to connect to people.
Right.
Because they're closer, they're right there, and they're 3 stories high.
Yeah.
But also, it changes the rhythms, it changes the interactions, the intimacy, all of it feels so different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to think if I've ever actually seen a farce on stage. I don't know that I have. Or a comedy. I saw the Music Man once.
Yeah, I mean, like they do like Shakespeare plays like in Hyde Park, but...
Oh, that's true. I've seen Shakespearean comedies performed live, but it is ultimately more about, I find when it's happening, it's more about physical business than it is about reactions. And so being able to see William Holden's eyes responding to Judy Holliday's performance, it completely changes our relationship to the action of it all.
Yeah. I think her other major role was also a play that became a movie, but I don't remember what it was. So maybe I'm wrong about that. Someone else can look that up. But she didn't do a lot. Like, she didn't live very long.
Yeah. And she was blacklisted for a few years too. At what would have been her peak, right after she won the Oscar for Playing Yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's again, it's just heartbreaking to think about all the things she could have done because she clearly wasn't just this one comic performance.
Yeah, and I know that we like talked on Twitter, but just like the existence of like the remake just seems like
we can talk about it. I mean,
it's just like
there's no point.
What a thing to decide to do, I guess. Like, to me, it's just like it's you kind of admire the gumption of trying to remake that movie, but then it, like, I've only seen clips of it, but it definitely doesn't feel like the same kind of nuance.
No, well, not only is it suffering from the fact that Melanie Griffith kind of already did it in Working Girl,
right? Where
the character, I mean, it's much more declarative,
right?
What is it? I have a head for business and a bod for sin, I think is actual dialogue. Thanks, Mike Nichols. But it's much more about how someone allows herself to be underestimated,
right?
Rather than someone who betters herself. She just basically cuts her hair and wears different suits.
Right.
That's the entire, and she impersonates her boss.
Right.
So it's much more of a deception than it is a revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess if you look at Harrison Ford's perspective, his character gets to be Holden because he gets to discover how smart this woman really is. Because she met him and he dismissed her as a bimbo, and then they see each other in a business context, and it changes everything. But when they tried it for Born Yesterday, Melanie Griffith, I always feel weird about telling this story. I've met her, I've interviewed her, and I want to believe, based on that interaction, that she was pretending to be very dumb.
Oh, yeah.
Because people shouldn't do that.
Right.
Be that. I'm always worried about it. Like, it's an awkward memory. This was 25 years ago on the press junket for Nobody's Fool with Paul Newman.
Okay.
And she was, and it's a great performance in that film. She's terrific. It's Robert Benton's movie. She plays sort of this temptress, the Bruce Willis's wife, who's just she's not really throwing herself at Newman, but she's teasing him a lot, and it's mean-spirited, but in an interesting way, and it's a good performance. And watching the film, I thought, oh, this is great. She's got range. I mean, I remember liking her in Something Wild, and she was good in Working Girl, and Cherry 2000 was kind of interesting. Let's see. Like, she's clearly trying to do something, and there was real talk about getting a supporting actress nomination going. And then the next day, they screen the film, and the next day you do the interviews, and I met her, and it was just like, oh, she takes direction really well sometimes. Right. But she was just... Yeah, I can see someone meeting that woman and casting her and saying, you'll be great for Billie Dawn. Right. And not understanding that you need the second half of that movie. Right, for sure. And I think Judy Holliday was, like, in Mensa or something. She was, like, very brilliant person. Yeah, you have to be smart to play that dumb. That's true. Right? Because she's also playing, like, she's not playing dumb. Billie is playing dumb. Right. So we have to see. It's, like, layers of, that's so true. And Melanie Griffith, I just don't think has that level of self-awareness to really... play both. I mean, who knows? This was 25 years ago. She might have had a bad day. You never know. I try to be as generous as possible to people, but it wasn't one of the worst interviews I've ever had, but it was one of the least. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it was a round table, so there were other dumb questions being thrown at her, and there was no depth really to anything that we were talking about, and this was right at the. She was married to Don Johnson, and everything was he was scandalous. Like, opposite her, right? Like, he played the William Holden. Oh, that's character. Right. He played the Holden character in John. Which is also weird. Like, just like that's not just like, oh, they put glasses on Don Johnson. Now he's bookish. Like, that also like it's true. There are many more problems with that film than just her. But like, like we were saying about the original. Like, if that doesn't work, then none of it's going to work around her. Yeah. Like, so, but it just seemed like another layer of absurdity that like, oh, he's the like scholar. Just. I'm not saying he's not a bright person. I know nothing about him, but just like putting glasses on Don Johnson was not enough to. Yeah. Just like they put glasses on Stephen Harper, and they're like, now he's nice or whatever. Like, just glasses, you guys. They can only do so many things. Yeah. Sweater vest. That's true, and the hair still looks like a serial killer. Exactly. Until you deal with the self-awareness, you have to do more. You have to really change. Yeah. But yeah, Don Johnson, Goodman gets it. Like, Goodman knows what he's supposed to do. I remember actually thinking, like, he has one moment where, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. You're leaning into your brutishness, and you're counting on the audience to know your inner sweetness, right, and hide behind that. Yeah. And it lets him go bigger and not necessarily in a comic fashion. Like, he can actually be threatening. And Johnson, I think I just remember him being apologetic a lot, like just sort of shrugging, like he's trying to disappear into himself. Yeah, I feel like they're like, just do like a Hugh Grant, kind of. Yeah. Like, they're like stammer a bit, and Don Johnson, who has never done these things, has to do these things. How do you think it would be like if you were to like cast it like a remake now? Yeah. Ooh. I wish I had a genius answer. That's a great question. Who would I put in there? Oh, I would put Timothy Olyphant in the Holden role.
Okay.
Because he can do comic frustration.
Right. Okay.
And he can also pretend to be, I don't know if you've seen Santa Clarita Diet, but
no.
that is the role of his life.
Oh, yeah?
It is gory. It's spectacularly gory.
I like movies where, like, people go to regionals. Like, if I'm, like, like, either things that I feel like I'm going to, like, get a lot out of, or, like, animals saving a holiday, someone goes to regionals. It's kind of like the three types of... So to me, I'm just like, oh, those posters alone upset me. Anyway, I believe that it has qualities.
It's very bloody, but it is a magnificent comedy.
Sure.
And he's great in it as someone who is in way over his head, but hell-bent on insisting that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Who would I put him against? I mean, Drew Barrymore is the co-star in Santa Clarita Diet, and she could probably do it, but she's maybe kind of wouldn't want to now.
Yeah, I was thinking about her in, like, Donnie Darko.
Cameron Diaz.
Oh, maybe.
Could do it. Or Margot Robbie could do it.
Oh, that's true. I really liked her in Focus.
Yeah, that was a great role for her. I forgot about that movie.
Watched it on a plane. I think there's, like, science about, like, you like movies more if you watch them on a plane or something. I don't know why, but people cry more movies they watch on planes, apparently. Listen to podcasts about it. So it could be part of why. Yeah, pressure, maybe.
Something
or
does
just,
something
like, you're about to go somewhere or be somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I liked her in Focus a lot. So, yeah, that would be good.
Yeah. Anybody could play the Bryder Crawford role who has a sufficiently threatening... Actually, you know what? Walton Goggins... Oliphant's co-star in Justified. I think I would rather see him play the Holden role.
Oh yeah.
Just because, again, he's the Southern gentleman. He's got this incredible poise, physical manners and mannerisms, and also good manners. And I think it would be fun to watch someone you associate with things like The Shield and Justified and bad guy parts to play a light comic role. Yeah. Because I think he could do it.
What do you think happens after they drive away? Like, I know they get married, but I'm just like, what does the rest of their life look like together? Like, I really love the movie Pride. Like, it's about the
British film.
Yeah, the coal miners and I love labor movement. That's my heart. And then I think about like that the credits where they're saying what everybody did, you know, and so I like to imagine, like, you know, when there's like that Sean, I forget her last name, but she's like, now she's an MP for Swansea and blah blah. So that would be like my dream, is that like if there was like a final, like a credits reel where you got to see what happened to everybody, like she would have ended up like, you know, in government or something. Like I think that they set it up like
a state senator.
Yeah, and
something small but meaningful.
Yeah, and I feel like they don't. I feel like that's not. Like, I think it's to a credit to the movie that seems feasible, you know? Like, it's not just like, okay, well, now... Like, it seems like now... Like, it doesn't seem like this is her peak. It just seems like now she's just getting started and being her own person, which I think is also how, like, a lot of romantic comedies tend to... Like, that's the ending. It's like, now this is the best... Like, the best moment is this, like, kiss, or now we're at their best. But I feel like I don't really have a sense of what he would do. I think he would just, like, hold her purse or whatever. That's fine. Yeah, but, like...
He'd be Ben Wyatt. He'd be Adam Scott in Parks and Rec. Just quietly supportive.
Great. We need more of that, stuff, frankly.
You know, taking notes, making sure, like, he wouldn't be her secretary exactly, but he would definitely be there to make sure she has whatever resources she needs.
It'd be interesting to see, like, Amy Poehler in that part too, just because, like, I wonder, like, if she could do it, because I know, because obviously, like, Parks and Rec is just very, like, you know, guileless and all that.
Optimistic,
but I'm just curious. It doesn't have to be a blonde person. Also, all I can think of is blonde people. I'm sure there's like a ton of like women of color who'd be great at it. Also,
Holliday makes such an iconic figure that you just can't not picture. I was thinking about that too. Who else could do it? Zazie Beetz could do it. She's in Deadpool in Atlanta. She's just got a great... She's much more sardonic, but if that was an element of the if that was an element of the performance that comes out of Billie's personality, she could absolutely nail that.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm just thinking about Ryan Reynolds is in the Holden role because he played Deadpool he played opposite Beats in Deadpool, and I can see that working.
That'd be very charming.
I just want to put Ryan Reynolds.
Seems like a nice person. Want the best for him.
We watched Detective Pikachu the other day. He's pretty good in that.
They don't I don't think the play doesn't tend to get mounted. Like, I don't. Do you know?
No, I think it's probably seen as just too archaic.
But
its attitudes are so retro. It's inevitable.
Aren't people still doing old Our Town or whatever? I feel like there's some of those old chestnuts people just kind of keep doing. But maybe the movie became like the canon version, or maybe after 1600 they're like, I'm just curious because I don't know, some plays just, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird was happening when I was in New York.
Oh, that's right.
I didn't go see it, but it was like
the Aaron Sorkin.
I know, it was like, I'm like, how can they put a walk and talk? How many walk and talks did they put into To Kill a Mockingbird? Just like pacing. So that's a play that gets is on stage a lot, but I haven't ever heard of. I'm sure people do, like maybe there's like community theater production of it or
summer
something.
stock, that sort of thing. It's probably a favorite somewhere that we just don't know about.
Yeah, but there's no like, oh, it's coming back and we've cast this star and kind of thing.
Because it's intimidating. I think of
That's
all of it.
true.
Like, I know I was in New York one year, and Chastain and Dan Stevens were doing The Heiress, which I still regret not going to see because that would have probably been great.
Yeah.
We went to, what did we see? Oh, we saw Michael Shannon play instead. We saw Proof with, not Proof, Grace.
Okay, I don't
Is
know
it Grace? With
Man, that's a trip.
Michael Shannon, Paul Rudd, Edward Asner, and Michael Shannon's partner, whose name escapes me. God damn it, Kathleen something, I think. And it was really interesting.
Okay.
It was great, and it was wonderful to see Paul Rudd as the deteriorating evangelical Christian.
Yeah.
And Shannon was terrific as a sympathetic engineer who's got a big plastic thing on his face because half his face was sheared off in an accident. His skin grafts and things are going on. We never really see it.
Right.
But yeah, I can see the intimidation of playing the Judy Holliday role, right?
Of course.
I mean, especially since we have the Melanie Griffith remake to show us like
The cautionary
an
tale,
object
well,
lesson
yeah.
in that this doesn't always work. It's
Yeah.
not a foolproof
It's
production.
true.
You could probably, anyone can do the Philadelphia story.
Right.
That script is going to be the star.
Completely, yeah.
And who could possibly, you wouldn't compare them to Grant or Stewart or
Yeah.
Hepburn. But this one, like, there is no movie without Judy Holliday.
Yeah.
There is no Born Yesterday without that version of Billie.
Right. And I think anybody who would think that they could nail it would be like a classic like Dunning-Kruger. Like they'd be like so bad at it. They're like, oh, I'm the next iteration, some vanity project or something.
Yeah.
Somebody will do their own version of it, but
And we do see, extrapolation. Like Legally Blonde is the
Completely.
millennial version, right? Because that
true.
is the same thing.
yeah.
But it's more about it's more like Working Girl, I guess, and it's about underestimation.
Yeah.
Or
Legally Blonde is nice because like the to me the happy ending in the credits story there is like that she's now best friends with like the BB character.
oh, that's right, the Bond.
And it's just like, oh, then she married like Luke Wilson or whatever. But like, it's just like, yeah, to me, it's just like when she's like, these two started whatever, and then it's like now they're best friends, and it's just like, oh, that's to me like the happy ending of that. And so, unfortunately, like Lily or like Born Yesterday does not pass. Does not pass the Bechdel test.
No,
Well,
is there another woman she can talk to?
There's like
There's
that,
the housekeeper.
and then there's that like couple that come, and that's when he realizes that she's. Yeah, they ask her like if she's if she's visited different places and she doesn't know, and she doesn't care, which I think is like, you never get the sense that she's like embarrassed by not. She's just like, this information is clearly, if it had any value, I'd already know it, and you're just asking like peppering me questions. So there's that kind of like stuffy. Is he like a yeah? Is that like he's supposed to be like he's supposed to be the good congressman you can't buy or something? I don't totally remember, obviously, but I have watched it recently. I just don't think of those people.
She's there to charm him.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the only other woman.
I forgot about that.
In the she's not in very much, and then I guess the housekeeper. So not good on the Bechdel test. So yeah, maybe like in a remake, it'd be great if she had like a great best friend who was her campaign manager.
Yeah.
And she ran for
a
whatever.
Joan Cusack, if you will.
Yeah.
For a Working Girl.
Oh, so true. She's so good.
But if you introduce another woman,
yeah, it's not super possible.
Yeah, there must be a way to do it. I mean, you could make the journalist a woman.
Yeah, that's true.
And then it's not a romantic comedy anymore. It's just about, or it could be. But
it could be, but it doesn't actually need to be.
About Billie.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a romantic comedy. Because even, because it's like it doesn't seem like any of that stuff happens because she falls in love with him, which is also nice.
She's already improving herself. Or she's doing that independently. It's not like she becomes just smart enough to appreciate him.
Right, and then like we'll do his vision or it's so I think that's very cool also it's not like his magic love makes her like a better person. So I don't even know if I think it'd be just as great if like it was a woman and it wasn't a romantic relationship and then they just kind of go off in a car together as well after having a victory against all these terrible men. Like a good Thelma and Louise, but like a happier,
just a different end.
Very
now
different.
what do we do? Run for Congress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, much better, much more upbeat. So that would be we should.
I should see that.
We should get on it.
See that working. This happens every now and then. You just crack a story. And
yeah, yeah. We get more women. If you were men in this, that's like it's usually my go-to. I wrote this piece for the Walrus that didn't go over super well. It was called "Lean Out," and it was just about the fact that like we can't both say that we want more women to run for things, but not also say we want fewer men to run for things, because it is a zero-sum game when it comes to Parliament anyway. I'm like, it's just math, and people were just like, anyway, it was a very funny response to just like an inarguable fact that
if there's more of one, there must be less of the other. Yeah. If it's a binary.
If it's you got 308 seats. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's what was I just reading? Something about the brilliant. Oh, it's the argument of Legion, which is that it's not us or them, it's us and them.
Oh.
We have to actually incorporate the people that oppose us in a way, or we all die.
Right.
That's the basic superhero premise, that we have to stop thinking of things in terms of heroes and villains.
Right.
And just realize that we're people. And it sounds squishy and dumb, but it's also the real problem facing literally every two-party system and every divided nation. And there's no solution. There really isn't, because there's going to be dead enders on both sides, and there'll be people who don't listen and dehumanize. And it's just depressing. And I like this thing. I like this theory that we're coming up with about Born Yesterday. Where, you can switch out a couple of...
shine theory. Yeah. It's like, I don't shine if you don't shine.
Yeah. And it is a movie about bettering everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, not just... She doesn't just better herself. She understands that it's her responsibility to make the world a better place, or at least America.
Right.
By pushing back against Barack.
It's true.
And Holden, whose name I never remember, Jefferson, just gets to spectate and be quietly in awe of what's going on, which is why I think of Ben Wyatt.
Yeah.
And Adam Scott, over the course of an entire 6-season run on television, discovering and helping us understand exactly why Leslie Knope isn't a disaster.
Right.
But one of the best people on the planet.
Yeah. It's just like we need like the AOC and like that kind of like, that's like the happy ending is someone becomes like Alexander Ocasio-Cortez. Something else I was thinking.
There can be only one.
I know. No, that's like, we can't have that.
Yeah, I know. That's the whole point of that movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That Obama, like the women who worked for Obama, like made a decision that they were all gonna like just reaffirm what the others said, because like, and that's sort of that like shine.
Rather than buy into the narrative of backbiting and
or just like and then I guess like there's a phenomenon where like a woman says something, then a man says it again, and then like now it's a good idea or whatever, and they would be like, we're just gonna like re-up everything, everyone's kind of be each other's hype women, because it is like, there's that like, I might be a TED Talk or something where like there's just one person who's dancing and it's like, what a weird guy, then like the second person who joins him is actually the one that starts the trend of being part of it, so once the second person comes up, it's like, oh, now we're doing a thing. So actually the second person is almost has almost more of an impact than the first person, which I think is... Yeah,
the second person is the tipping point.
Yeah,
right?
It's
like
kind
it
of...
makes it okay for other people.
For sure. So in some cases, I do think, obviously I do think men take credit for women's ideas, do not get me wrong, but like, you hear something twice, you're like, oh yeah, no, like it's just like, once two people have said it, maybe it just, in your head, feels like a more credible idea, so they just all agree that they were kind of like, second each other's ideas and stuff, and so that's what would happen in our remake of Born Yesterday with the women.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I think there's something here.
I think so too.
So, you kind of already covered it up top, but is there anything of Born Yesterday that you find yourself relying on, falling back on, using beyond the mixture of how did you put it?
The
under promise, over deliver.
Disarming versus bimbo, under promising, over delivering. Yeah. Well, to be honest, like I feel like my whole body of work is like trying to create like entry points for like civic participation, which sounds very dry, but like I like being the person that I think it's funny because like I think being a sign language interpreter like made me like the writer I am, because it's just like you're taking information and putting it out right away but in a way that is going to connect with the audience, and in my case it was an audience of a single teenage boy. I like to think I can get that a bit broader, but I do think that like it's all about like like no stupid questions. Like I'm always like trying to be a person that someone can like send a Facebook message to and be like, I feel really dumb, but like I don't understand what's happening in Parkdale High Park, like because there was this like NDP nomination meeting and there's a lot of conflict happened, and so like I'm never gonna, I try to be the person who's never like, oh, what do you mean, like how do you not know that, because I haven't been to university, and I feel like there's books you've only read if someone made you read them in university. Like,
sure,
I strongly feel that. And so there's times I'm just like, I don't know what that book is. And then I kind of feel like a rube or whatever. But I work at the Center for Social Innovation, and it's interesting because our CEO, Tanya Sermon, who I also worked with at Rabble like 20 years ago, she is an amazing person. But what I love about her the most is that she will ask questions she knows the answers to get the information in the room, because she knows that she's smart enough and she doesn't have to she's willing to kind of be, it's not really vulnerability, but like it's also like, I guess it's like she's built a team that she can trust to not feel like she's stupid if she asks a question. But I think it's very generous to be like, oh, I don't know, And so we had this speaker come talk to us a couple of staff meetings ago, and he was talking about derivatives, and we were all like, what is happening? And so Tanya would be like, I'm sorry, like I totally forgot, what is this again? And I know that she knows this stuff backwards and forwards, but it was just like none of us wanted to ask, because it's like we all kind of felt kind of dumb. And it's interesting because she also is this like, like blonde curly hair, and like she's very like femmy in her dress, and she goes to Burning Man and she wears like top hats and bustiers, and she's like, so she's a lot like that, and so and anyway,
so she just picked up on the room not knowing it.
Pardon me?
She just picked up on the room.
She could tell we didn't know, so she asked. So she kind of fell on her sword that way. So I feel like I really admire that, and so I'm always trying to like create those entry points, and so it's obviously like it's never too late to get involved with something, and it is really complicated, but it's like also not, and I used to run this when I first moved to Nova Scotia. Everybody in that town was like, it was a town of like 500 people. Everyone was either under 20 or over 60, and so I started this website called Marigold, and it was like dial-up internet. I had this message board, and people would be like, oh, I can't really follow, I can't follow politics. And I was like, okay, well, here's the thing, like if you know like the last 3 relationships this character had on like Young and the Restless, like honestly, like you can, that's a transferable skill, and you don't have to know where every party stands on every issue, right? And like you don't have, people are like, oh, did you, like I wrote speeches for Jack Layton, and they're like, oh, did you, like where did you do your master's? I'm like, I don't have any university, right? And so I try to be like, you don't like, not gatekeeper stuff is bullshit, and it just keeps things like, it's just like the status quo. And so anyway, I forgot what I was saying about politics, but yeah, you just like, so what are your main issues? Like if you super care about like, do you care about like, consent-based sex ed curriculum? Do you what are the things that kind of fuel you? Because most people have that, and then like you just figure out where the parties stand on those things. And like, I like to think that if you have these like 3 key issues you care about, and you find a party that matches there, like hopefully it's not going to be this weird isolated things where, oh no, now I'm a Tory, but so yeah, so
it's so insidious.
I know, that's how they get you. So yeah, I feel like that's actually how they got Chuck Cadman, because his son was murdered, and they were like, we're gonna tough on crime, and we're gonna help kids, and
they were there for him at his most vulnerable.
I know, but then he was there for the queers of Canada at his most vulnerable, because he was the deciding vote on equal marriage, and he was like the only conservative I think who voted for it. It was like a tiebreaker vote, and he was so close to death. He's chewing gum because his mouth was dry from chemo, and like he died really shortly after. Solidarity. If I could like do like any like, and I guess if I could do anything to fix the world, it would be like the concept of solidarity kind of like getting reinvigorated, and maybe it'll happen, but and I guess asking questions you know the answers to is an act of solidarity, which is why I find it so moving. So I feel like it's just like, people, when I was at Oxfam, they're like, here's a CETA report, like, can you make it into tweets? And I was like, absolutely. And if I can't, then it's because I'm not good at my job, And so there's always a way to make something clear. And I read like simple language Wikipedia, which is amazing. Like, I think you can only use like the 1,000 most common words or the 10,000 most common words. Like, and it's a real skill. And it's and I feel like there would be times where there would be like a teacher speaking in a class, and I would be like, what are you saying? And I'm like, I don't think you're saying anything. And part of it is that like the grammar is completely flipped. Like in English we do like time, topic, discussion, but in ASL it's like the topic and then you kind of expand on it. So people will kind of talk and they're not at the topic yet, and so you can't start signing, and then the dev gets like, what is it about? I'm like, I can't tell. But sometimes people actually aren't saying anything is my takeaway. And so I feel like, then that you're kind of trash. And so I feel like if like there's nothing worth communicating that like can't be communicated in a way that like you know, like, is that entry point for somebody to kind of become who they are, you know, and of course, like, then things can get a bit more complicated, and there's that, like, also amazing scene in The West Wing where, like, that he's up against that kind of, like, folksy George Bush maybe kind of character, and the guy's really good at, like, the sound bites and stuff, and he's like, okay, but what are the next 10 words, you know, and he's like, and so, like, the next 10 words are definitely important, but, like, the more people you have in the room, the better the next 10 words are going to be, and so I really feel like, yeah, two people really influenced me. Judy Rebick, obviously, like, I worked for her at Rabble, but she told me that in all her years hosting Face Off, that no, like, able-bodied white guy ever turned down an appearance saying he didn't know enough, but that, like, women of color did all the time, and people with disabilities, and, like, you know, and I don't, like, and I don't say that to be like, oh, white guys, they think they know everything, but it's like, if only that confidence was universal, then, like, we get a lot more, you know, opinions in the room, and so I've just kind of never let myself say, like, oh, I don't know enough. Even coming here, like, I was like, I haven't taken film, like.
But you brought notes.
I did bring
You're
notes.
prepared.
But I was just like, I don't, like, what if it's about camera angles? Like, I don't know, you know, whatever. So everyone has their own, like, imposter syndrome.
You've listened to this
I know,
podcast.
but you can all, like, psych yourself out for anything, right? So,
sure, yeah.
So, yeah, I was just like, people get that imposter syndrome kind of kicking in. Yeah, like, there's, you know, and if there isn't space for, like, people with all, like, levels of understanding in your movement is, like, probably not going to go anywhere, as well as, like, probably not be very good. So anyway, yeah, so I think it's just, like, you know, communicating something in a way that, like, can bring people in, and then, you know, and I've seen so many people, like, the person who told me that she didn't know enough about politics, you know, then she's like, oh, I'm super worried about my brother because he's got asthma, and we're in Cape Breton, and, like, the mines are terrible, and, like, the hospital's becoming a health center or whatever, and
yeah, congratulations, you have a cause.
Right, and I was like, oh, you care about something, but she's just like, people are like, oh, well, politics is this, like, separate, or government, people are like, oh, government, I'm like, it's just people, you know what I mean, and like, I worked on Parliament Hill for a while, and there were so many funny moments, like, that was during, like, the whole, like, prorogation of everything, and but, like, also you all work in the same building, so there's only, like, a certain level of animosity you could have, and, like, there was, I think it was, like, I don't even remember what the protest was, but, like, I got on the elevator, like, holding my sign that just said yes, and the other person just said no, and I was like, hey, like, I was like, so do you think it's cafeteria open? Okay, I'll see. Because, anyway, so I just, like, yeah, there's, I don't know, there's a lot of things I think about this, but even, like you said, like, you know, all the divisions, and, like, people are humans and stuff, and one of my best friends, her name is Natalie Walshotz, and she was doing her PhD in Gamergate, yeah, and she initially was doing it about the Anita Sarkeesian thing that happened. They made a game of beating her up, and she was going to be, like, looking back at Gamergate, but then she started her PhD, and then the Zoe Quinn thing happened, where Zoe Quinn's boyfriend was like, she slept her way to all these good reviews for her, like, indie game that is not going to ever, whatever. So that was, so Natalie now is in the thick of kind of, like, an active conflict versus, like, a looking back on a other conflict, and so she was, people would show up at her home and at her work, and she ended up dropping out of her program, it's really not worth it, you know, and it's just, like, I think, you know, she's at McGill, or no, she's Concordia, I'm sorry, Natalie, she's in Montreal, I don't know about universities, but I think it's Montreal, like, you're also, like, you know, there's that, like, Marc Lepine, like, you know, obviously Montreal is not more dangerous than anywhere else, but I think if you're, like, a woman who's in a place, and men are coming at you saying, like, you don't, like, this is not the space for you, like, you know, he separated the women, like, I'm killing you because you're feminist, and I think it's hard to not, anyway, have people coming to her door. So she ended up leaving her program. But we had these Twitter fights, and I would kind of get her back. But these guys, they were, like, so vicious and so furious. But I would go to their feeds and find something completely innocuous. And I'd tweet at them. I'd be like, oh my goodness, your rose bushes, they're lovely. And, like, the response would be like, nobody ever gave me flowers, so I grew my own. And now there's, like, this vulnerable person. And I'm just like, because it's like a game, and you're, like, not people to each other, but, like, then, like, the tiniest little things, and I have, you know, I have friends who've just been like, oh, we like the same baseball team, and now the conflict is kind of over, and anyway, part of what I like to do, as well as create, like, entry points for civic participation, is, like, as much opportunity for common ground as possible. Like, I'm definitely not someone who's just like, you know, people of color should just get in the room with, like, white supremacists and chat it out. Like, I don't mean that, but I think that when I ran the message boards at Rabble, I had to kind of fight to have, like, pop culture, like, these sort of fluffier forms, but I was like, it's physically impossible to be furious at a person you've seen a picture of their cat, which might not be true, but it's almost true. Yeah, and it's just like, if you've like chatted about this, like how you had the same favorite character on Buffy, this was like in the 90s, like you're probably not, you're going to be kinder to each other about like your opposite NDP leadership candidates who have the same values anyway, and you're just like, oh, because you can get really entrenched. Anyway, so, yeah, I think it's approaching people like, you know, like he doesn't, I think that the teacher is probably surprised by how bright she ends up, or maybe like it's this exponential growth, but he's never like, he doesn't treat her like she's stupid, you know? He doesn't come at her like she's stupid. He just relates it to things that she knows and cares about, and then like from there there's that traction, and I feel like, you know, people will send me things that my whole career, people are like, put this in the website, and I run it through readability thing, and I'm like, send it back when it's grade 8, you know, because it's like grade 14, and I'm like, I don't understand it. So I'm happy to be the person who's like, this does not make a lick of sense to me, and I'm fairly bright, you know? So I'm like, anyway. So yeah, I think that's my big takeaway, is just that, like, if you meet people, like, one at a time and give them information in ways that don't patronize them, and I think it's this mixture of, like, familiarity and surprise. I think if it's just surprising, then it's kind of jarring, and you're like, this isn't for me, and you back away. And if it's just familiar, you're like, oh yeah, I got this, and you kind of also back away. So you really bring people in with, like, they're like, oh yeah, oh. Like, that's what I'm always going for. Like, every time I write something, I want someone to be like, yeah, that makes sense, that tracks, because then now we're on, like, a credibility, and you just, like, and they're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. So that's my goal, to change the whole discourse, like just impacting the discourse is what I'm always trying to do. So I do this daily newsletter at work. We had this bi-weekly newsletter, and I was like, I'm going to do it every day, and I completely changed it up, and so now it has like research in it. It has all these things in it, but it's like taking like a 38-page report, just like pulling out the infographic and like 3 bullet points, because like that's all, like you don't, most people don't, you know, like that's, it's not written for everybody to read them. That's a specific audience, but anyway, there was one today about, like, you know, the data that shows that if you link women together into a community, like, you know, it could be like, could bring $3 trillion into the economy, because just the way women shine in theory, helping other women, whatever. So, yeah, I don't want anyone to ever feel like they're too stupid to make a difference. And I think so many people do. Oh yeah, the other person who influenced me as well, Judy Rebick, was Meryl Duckworth. She was a peace activist, Nova Scotia. She died at age 102, maybe 10 years ago. And she told me that anything worth doing was worth doing badly. And she was just like, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but whatever. And I'm just like, oh my God, you won a Nobel Peace Prize. Like, you know what you're talking about. I think she was like part of Voice of Women. They all kind of went together. But, you know, like, so just, yeah, like she didn't wait until she thought it would be perfect. You have to kind of do something bad before you get good at it. And so both of those things from Judy saying, you know, like don't say you don't know enough, because then people are watching, then they're going to think they don't know enough either, because they don't see anyone who looks like them knowing enough. And yeah, Muriel just being like, just, you know, don't wait until you feel like you have all the answers to start trying to make a difference. Because when you start to make a difference, you find out right away you don't have all the answers, or some of the ones you had are wrong anyway. So there's no point in, like, you know, trying to stockpile all the solutions before you start solving problems. So yeah,
there's just the unknown. The fun of the unknown is figuring out how you surmount each new challenge.
Exactly, yeah.
Which will otherwise kill you.
Yes.
It's still fun.
I know. Yeah.
We got a long way on this. We did really well. I was worried just because, well, it's a screwball comedy. What are you going to...
Yeah.
Like, where can you go other than a discussion of genre? But this is actually better.
Oh.
I think that, yeah, Billie Dawn would definitely have the best, like, literal parties in politics.
Right.
She would
it's
know
true.
how to cater to people and bring people over to her side.
But Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, like, she does Instagram videos where she talks about her skincare routine and Congress, you know? And it's just like... And I think I've had so many people be like, I don't want to dumb down the content. I'm like, I think that you're dumb and you don't really know what this says, you know? Like, it's hard to... And so I think people are just like, oh, what a, like, you know, put her back behind a bar or whatever.
But that's, like, again, that's what you need in a politician. You need someone who can talk to anybody who shows up. Completely. That's a barback. That's the thing about her that is so amazing, is that she's camera ready. Obviously, she's grown up in front, because everybody of her age has grown up with a camera in their pocket, and they understand how to perform. Yeah. But she's also able, as you say, she can... I'm doing it now. I'm seconding the thing you just said.
No, it's good.
But she is giving amplification to actual issues, and she's just so goddamn good at Twitter. Like, she can just respond.
Yeah, because she's just like, she's able to really, like, you know, you can read a tweet and I'm like, oh, I think I understand everything. I read 3 articles and I'm still confused, and I read this one tweet and it's all really crystallized.
Yeah. And when people try to give her shit, she can fire back at them from a place that doesn't feel petty.
Yeah.
And always, like, I don't know how she still has the high ground.
I know.
Because I would have gone so low by now.
She got, like, thrillingly petty once, because there was that whole, like, put AOC behind a bar again, like, make America great again, put AOC behind a bar again. And then she did, like, do a bartending stint, like, a few months ago, like, to talk about minimum wage laws in New York. And she was like, I'm getting back behind a bar, you bunch of milk drinkers. I was like, oh my God, that's, like, such an amazing burn. Like, she didn't swear, she didn't get uncouth, just like, you bunch of milk drinkers. It was so good. So yeah, I think that, like, you know, I do think that it'd be amazing to picture, like, yeah, a Billie Dawn, like, you know, talking about, like, her wardrobe and doing her hair and, like, her dye and all these things, but also, like, this is what's happening in Congress, this is how you make a law and things like that. And I think that AOC, like, I think that someone like that probably gets the advice of, like, okay, like, be as, like, you know, be as much as what everyone else thinks is what credibility looks like as possible, and she's just rejected that. And, you know, and she said that, like, she was told not to wear hoop earrings because it looks trashy or whatever. And then she was like, you know, then she wears hoop earrings, and she's like, if your mom gives you shit for wearing hoop earrings, so you're dressing like a congresswoman. And I think so she's coming at it from the other way. Like, she's changing what it means to be a congresswoman instead of trying to be like, oh, now I don't, like, make silly Instagram videos, or now I don't make macaroni and cheese, or now I don't, or, like, now I'm too smart to care about, like, my skincare routine, you know? And I think it's like, we get that idea of, like, the binary, right? Like, and I think that, like, you see it a little bit in Born Yesterday, because her clothes get, like, kind of a bit more tempered, and so it's hard. It's just like, okay, like, it could be that she's, like, now that she's getting smarter, she's, like, not dressing, you know, it's like, but she never gets super prudish, but or it could be that
she's still fairly well, confident is how I describe it, right? It just, the style changes a little bit, but it's not like it was salacious to begin with.
No, but I like to think that she's, like, I'm just gonna be more comfortable, you know, like, maybe she's, like, she's not spending as much time on it because she's realizing that she has other ways to have belly, but she also, you know, isn't not spending any time on it. There's this, like, horrible meme, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just, like, it's this, like, cartoon lady with big boobs and big blonde hair and high heels, and she's walking, and then she bends down and picks up a book, and then she's, like, got brown hair, and she's wearing a hoodie, and which
is actually apparently a reversal of some, I think it's called bimbofication,
maybe,
which I did not want to know about, but now I know about.
Yeah, there's a really good sentence of the comic where, like, the bimbo version and the like, college student version just, like, run away together, and they're, like, kind of, like, reject the binary altogether. But there is that idea, like, oh, like, as you get smarter, like, your breasts get smaller, you know. Anyway, in the comic, so I think that it's interesting that, like, she does, you know, her outfits change, but it doesn't feel, it's pretty subtle, I think, because, like you said, like, she's still, like, wants to look good. It's just, it's not like she stops caring about her appearance. So that was, like, something I read that was kind of intentional. I guess in the play there's, like, 6 different costumes, and maybe, like, the contrast is a bit more stark just because there's fewer, and I guess in the movie there's 18, so there's, like, the spaces between are quite a bit smaller.
You'd have to, with a play, you'd have to be dealing with telescoping time anyway.
Yeah, it can't be quite as subtle. So, yeah, so someone like AOC who's just, like, gets things wrong, like, tells you about her lip gloss, but also tells you about laws and stuff. I think that would, like, we need more of that, like, not less of it, and I think that's what Billie Dawn would turn into.
Yeah, her authentic self.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. You just still care about those things.
You just get to, you know, change the world, too.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. That's all I want. To, like, have matching hair elastics and change the world.
My thanks to Audra Williams, whose Temperance Tarot project just got funded on Kickstarter last month, which means we can look forward to some very interesting non-alcoholic cocktails in the near future. You can also see her in Overdrawn at the Memory Bank, in Shout Factory's Mystery Science Theater 3000 DVD box set, Volume 4, which is definitely the first time that's been a thing on this show. You can find Audra on Twitter at Audra Williams, all one word, and you can find Born Yesterday on DVD from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment. It's also been released on Blu-ray by Twilight Time in the US and Arrow Films in the UK, and it's on iTunes and Google Play. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com. You can also find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, S-E-M-Cast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you enjoy the show. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're at it. The Gravy Train is still going strong, and The Big Story remains essential listening Monday through Friday. Thanks for your support, and thanks for listening. See you next week.